Welcome to the Magic 2020 session. So my name is Teresa Ng, and I'm with BBAM, a company called BBAM in San Francisco. So let me go back and make sure I am okay. So good to go. Excellent. Thank you so much for confirming. Um, Okay, great. So my session is making the case for business application role mapping, and in particular with startup and smaller size companies. I'm with this industry for about 20 plus years now in the product and data domain, and also in the program and project management space. I've managed and from management and lead role all the way to individual contributor in the program and project management space, from data analysis, business analysis, data governance, etc. So I've been in different capacity throughout my 20 plus years of experience. In the most recent role, I joined BBAM. I know most of you probably have not heard of our company. Surprisingly, when I joined, I've never heard of them also. We are one of the largest, or not the largest, in aircraft leasing in the world for 20, 30 years now. And we're pretty much the single player in this space. We do provide a full service from pre-sale marketing, facility management, all the way to sustain technical services of any aircraft, if you will. So we have over 200 airlines. They're our customer, either lessee, lessor, at various of roles that we play. And our role is to manage the full service from end to end, in 90 countries at present. So if you get onto an airplane, think of us. We do have play in the market, maintaining your safety and all the maintenance from inception to really the traveling business. And as you know, our industry has been hitting pretty hard, and I think it's been very, I would say, discouraging. I think we will go through, and our industry very resilient, through the 9/11 and through the economy downturn come through. And I think, as for myself personally, I cannot wait to travel the minute it's safe to do so. So as I was saying, our industry has been hitting pretty hard. So I think, economy aside, all of us can't wait to get back to travel again. So you and I included. So with that, I want to, let's see, what's the best way to do that. Let me go back to presentation mode. Okay, great. When I joined BBAM about 2 years ago, it's a very small company. My role is it's a net new position added to IT. I was tasked to look into automating the back office operation, the help desk operation, the on and offboarding of the employee. So, from the landscape infrastructure, we didn't have any sort of PMO or TPMO concept. It's more like, we have a problem, come in and help us solve it. With that opportunity, I started sort of formulating an idea and creating sort of a small technical program management practice, if you will, right? So I think the rest of the session, I would like to focus on my own experience with BBAM, and also the experience in the past. A lot of times, small-sized to medium-sized company having a technical project management practice, it's not really scalable and feasible, if you will. So, but I would have thought a little differently. So I sort of put that thought process and concept together with my very first project implementation. That's the help desk implementation. So I use that sort of a pilot and put together a sort of a conceptual framework to help sort of build this practice, from that, beginning of the journey and forward, right? And some of you definitely would know what technical program management is all about, but some of us may not know the detail. And of course, it really depends on the office size, the company, and the culture. So what is TPMO, right? So a lot of people would ask, what is the difference between program and project management? How does that help our company grow? Can we just simply get a tool and implement it? And there's so many methodologies out there, templates, and there's usually information overload. Where do you even start? Does that model work for us, right? It's, some of us might say, it's a complete waste of time documenting and interviewing our business stakeholders, because in the end they may not really read the document, right? What is the right formula for our size of a company? And there's so many questions out there, and then these are the very same of mine as well. And having that position net new to IT, I had the privilege and humble experience to really start this conversation and to really look at the challenges from within and from inside out and outside in. And TPMO concept to the leadership team, especially with a startup and smaller size company, it's very I would say very intangible and very artificial, if you will. It's a framework. There are a lot of slideshows, a lot of conversations and discussions, and sometimes action might not be the ultimate game, the concept itself. However, having a TPMO starting from ground up, regardless of the size of the company, to me, personally speaking, really puts some kind of discipline to the cross-functional team. And then essentially, it's a foundation of all conversations, right? Having the visibility to what we do, how we do it, and also the ROI, and putting some standard into communication and collaboration. And I think, I would say, again, coming back to the size of your company and starting with my own experience, it is a very much needed journey to start, and especially in this day and age that cash it's a challenge, funding is a challenge, so you want to really hone into what can you do with more and have that visibility and discipline across the company culture. So how my approach was very, I would say, the 50,000, feet up and down to the individual contributor. I kind of come up, this is sort of my working model, and it's really evolving. So what I had put together in really the foundation of TPMO was I started a SharePoint site, sort of a program site, and put together some building blocks. And I think what I had displayed here is really 4 building blocks are really would ensure some kind of success metric, right? And of course, this is really iteration. But to start the foundation, I had included this 4 building blocks, and to some of you, or most of you, should be very familiar in some form or shape. First is the business system and technology alignment, right? And I know we heard this morning the keynote, the hone into the 3 Ps, the people, process, and platform. They are very much interconnected. So we'll go through some of that user story at the subsequent slide. Next, we have the collection of information. How do we even begin planning and prioritizing, right? So that's really a lot of the risk mitigation, the way how we score and rank the projects depending on capacity and funding. So we'll go into a bit of my experience subsequently as well. Coordination and communication, super key. It's about communication. It's really, you never really communicate once and then you drop and you never come back to revisit. You always want to make sure that the sentiment, the tone is there, and you always want to make sure that and you are connected with really the people who can make the difference and the catalyst, and be consistent with the communication. So it's super critical of this building block, right? Last but not least, I spoke about one of the questions we always have. It's, when we document something, oftentimes they're outdated. Documentation is often the last thing people would have time for. However, when, especially with this unfortunate pandemic situation, the digital content and the asset are super critical to company communication, growth, and collaboration. So the last building block I'll touch a little bit on is the content and knowledge management. Okay, so some of these slides, content, I know most of you are very familiar, but we'll definitely speak to and open for questions as well. Okay, so the first building block I will speak to is really the people, process, and technology, business system, technology alignment, right? I kind of put a very generic, colorful visual just to kind of want to tell a compelling story that a lot of times when you have a semi-mature IT organization, you would have an IT application team or partnership with the architecture group. You already would have a good level 1 vetted baseline architecture diagram that showcase the landscape of all your application databases and the key process, the upstream, downstream, in and outbound flow. So if you don't have something like that, or you don't have a dedicated resource, I would definitely recommend, that was my very first task for the 3 months, is to really, went out to the different business stakeholders and talk to our infrastructure team, our apps team, and kind of collectively put together the level 1, level 2, and level 3 diagram that showcase the critical systems that we have in BBAM, all the key processes, the system of records, what are some of the key data elements that everyone is really interested in. So, I spent about 3 months using Visio, SharePoint, some kind of metadata template to capture a diagram similar like that has all the sort of the connecting the dots, the system process, and somewhat, if you have the time, indicate the data or the key system of record for the key data element. So this is really important as your baseline foundation in any TPMO or successive TPMO, because in the journey and beyond, you will often come back and say, if we need to do a refresh on infrastructure, the data center upgrade, or an augmentation of a process, or ingestion of a new process, or an upgrade enhancement, or a re-implementation of certain project. This is your baseline, and you want to make sure that this is also being reviewed occasionally or frequently, and being vetted through anytime when you have new system or process coming in, and you want to make sure you do the due diligence and impact analysis. So that's really important. Okay, so next you want to sort of align, the TPMO concept from horizontal to vertical, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of a horizontal support. And horizontal would either be a program or a project, if you will. And to me, in a smaller startup company, the TPMO is truly the foundation of all your resources, capacity, and your collaboration platform. Your vertical will be your business alignment, your key business domain area. And in our company, we have legal, contract, technical services, finance, accounting, sales and marketing, and IT. So this really dynamic is pretty much a very standard, small, medium, large scale business. These are all the vertical domain that we support as an IT organization. So TPMO very logically and simply will sit on as a foundation to support all these verticals. And part of your job as a TPMO, start embarking on this journey, apart from putting together the level diagram, architecture, landscape, process flow, is to identify all the key systems that align with each of these vertical, very importantly, to make sure that is relevant and you can connect the dots at the subsequent processes, right? For example, in legal, we've recently transformed really all the manual processes and implemented a SaaS solution for matter management and e-billing, the up and downstream, just in time when we started the shelter in place in our company. So that was a huge win with our legal counsel, the leadership across BBAM. So that was really a great pilot project, again, testament to having a small discipline of TPMO, standing up the TPMO practice, so that we can effectively and efficiently work as a remote workforce and still support our customers, internal and external. Right. For contract and, respectively for each of the vertical, you do want to identify all the key systems they use day in and day out. So, you would use different template. For me, Visio or having a SharePoint site that can be sort of collaborated with will be a good tool. My focus will not be a tool, selling the tool, or specifically what works for you is what works for you, really. So again, for each of the vertical, make sure sure that you identify all the key systems they use day in and day out, especially the critical processes like the finance and accounting. We are on Oracle Fusion, and we use HFM for consolidation and CRM. So these are very standard, I would say, stack of technology that all company would use one way or the other during their growth scale. So it's very important to understand where they are today and aligning all of these critical systems to each of the vertical business units so that you know where they are. Do they need to scale? And and later on, you'll probably formulate a lot of user stories and goals and objective they want to accomplish, next 6 months or 9 months, etc. So this is a very critical conversation you might want to have with your key stakeholders for each of the respective vertical alignment. Okay, so what do you do, the takeaway from that conversation? I would say from a timeline standpoint, depends on your culture and how complex your business mix is. I would say, allocate about a month and a half or so, 45 and 60 days max to kind of give yourself sort of a block to, complete that exercise, align the system to the business vertical so that you sort of have a blueprint to work with. And the next thing, some of the key takeaway or the next exercise you want to do is identify really, connect certain dots, right? From system to system, where's the upstream, where's the downstream, and also the owner and data and system owner, if you will. And through those conversations, definitely make sure that you get the right people and ask the right question, because these are all the artifacts that you will have as sort of a critical inventory for you to, solidify your TPMO practice, right? A lot of times people would say, oh, I enter my contract in, a content management, but at the same time, I would expect someone else to enter the contract and term and amortization schedule in my lease and contract management. Where does the data flow? Where's the inception? Where is truly the authoritative source of a contract? All the parties involved and all the terms, etc. These are all the great questions to ask that's relevant to your business practice. Okay, so the next exercise is super critical, and really it's really how you connect the dots and how you really come to learn as an individual contributor in a TPMO. And coming from BBAM experience, it's just myself, and sometimes in your case you might have a TPMO that have the oversight, and then maybe one or two individual contributor that align with certain business. That would be a fantastic really organization structure, but sometimes you don't have the luxury. So to start, it's definitely a great idea to have that one person that have the right capacity and skill set to help really steer and pilot this concept. So the next slide, this slide that I'm showing, it's probably somewhat familiar with to those of you who have done some sort of matrix user story alignment. So here is really a collection of all the interviews and working sessions that you already have with your key stakeholders. Aligning on the left-hand side, as you can see, you have legal, marketing. These are all your business units, your vertical practice. And your core system that you already extrapolated from your key stakeholder. These are the systems they use day in and day out. And then some of the reference system that they source, maybe download, a Bloomberg rate or another report from your risk portfolio management system or something like that. So you have your, again, vertical business alignment. You have all the core system they use day in, day out, the core system, and then reference system that they would use for augmentation, analysis, etc. Right? And the third column is super important, and I think I have a few slides at the end of the presentation to touch a little bit on the data domain. It's all about data, especially this age that you have so many data tools out there, and you have so many applications and so many processes. In the end, you want to make sure that you create certain sets of data that make sense to help business make the right decision. So my intent with this TPM practices really go down to the fundamental, right? The rudimentary of the core system and foundation of your company. It's really your master data, right? Your contract parties, look at your 360, your MDM hub. Who are the key players? What are the concentration, intensity? If majority of the carrier, or if you will, airline or country, geographic. So these are all the key data element that you want to document and align with each of the respective system and data and process owner. So when you block your 45-day time frame to do the working session with your key stakeholder, make sure do involve the data element or data aspect of it, and make sure you ask all the right questions and tag each of the core system could potentially be your system of record for all your key data or master data, if you will. Right. And a lot of times in the end, it's really what is my financial impact, right? Accounting. A lot of times people would ask, when you go through your month-end cycle, where do you get your data from? How does your month-end process look like? So this whole sort of the first 3 column will give you, as a TPMO participant or stakeholder, a great oversight or preview into the how your business operate from a cross-functional team perspective, interdependency and dependency perspective, the moment you have a contract certified, all the way to data collection or cash collection or sustain or technical services to a fleet or aircraft. You understand the entire process cycle, especially with the data domain involved, because it's all about data making the right decision, right? Coming back to why we're talking about this session today is really the roadmap, the forward looking. A lot of times in a smaller company, you do have those water cooler conversation or day-to-day emails say, hey, I want this to be ingested to the data mart, or I want this report, I want to automate cash flow, etc. There's a lot of sort of informal conversation that you might encounter day in and day out, either with yourself or with the IT manager, or whoever that's being sort of integrated in different spaces or different conversations, different time and place. But your job as a TPMO to start is sort of collect all these user stories, right? I mean, how and where, how do you get that conversation started? How do you sort of ingest the discipline? Because everyone's priority is their number one priority, right? So having this chart really help you steer in the right direction, the right path to eventually get to the ROI, the best bang for the buck. How do you, tackle these sort of, 10 or 12 user stories? Where do you start? Again, having this slide, having the exercise that you've gone through will help you make those mapping decisions properly, really. So in the finance and accounting world, I put in some of the standard ask of my business partner, the treasury platform. We have a SaaS treasury platform. We may or may not be utilize it fully. I think today we want to make sure that the cash flow projection is really on point, and all the elements that come into the cash flow, the in and outbound, the cash disbursement and receipt are well reviewed, match, and make sure that at any point you do have a good cash flow position. And again, in this specific day and age, cash position forecast and is super critical to the leadership team. And the following are some examples that I've extrapolated from the user story. These are some of the asks from our business. So I kind of mapped them into the domain and system. As you can see, the pink areas are the user story / roadmap outlook for the next, I would say 9 to 12 months. And the blue, the magenta arrow was kind of pointing to where are the correlated system or they intersect with the data system and the business alignment. So this will give you sort of a 360 holistic view of how things are connected. So next, now that you have sort of a / quote unquote kitchen sink of all the, wonderful projects and desire from your cross-functional team, how do we begin project planning and prioritization, right? You probably want to understand the problem statement and, what problem you're trying to solve and for whom. So the next a couple slides is purely my own humble experience. Of course, there's so many art prioritization template and ranking and scoring that you could use. I think first and foremost, in my past experience, not so much with BBAM, is that we have a business council, right? Cross-function team, they do meet monthly or quarterly to go through if there's a new product launch, there's, pain points or, the top 10 tickets, and sometimes you have, process, the job failure, if it happens more often. So, this business council is a great platform. If you have that concept, definitely follow through and get the buy-in from leadership and get the right people involved, the fair representation from the cross-functional team from your company, and have that body and authority. I think that would be a great testament to having this TPMO foundation as your channel to speak, to collaborate, and to really help understand what are the true priority cross-functionally speaking that matters to the whole company, right? So so that's an option. For us, it's such a small company. It's usually a one-on-one or a quarterly meeting or weekly meeting, if you will. And a lot of times we have newsletter being shared. So we understand definitely the challenges that our business are facing. So we are very much on top of sort of a communication. But to formalize that platform, we use SharePoint really, and also really the one-on-one or monthly check-in with our cross-functional team as sort of the foundation channel to sort of sustain that platform to come back and reevaluate from time to time the priorities, right? So that's really the sort of the springboard into having sort of a formal body to help you to really embark on this journey, right? So now that you have your foundation, you start building the house. So delineation between program and project, and a lot of times smaller company just kind of bypass program and just having maybe hire one or two project managers to help sort of embark on the different SaaS or information or system solution and implement it. And the program, I would say, with our company, it's about 175 people big. I would say having a TPMO discipline and a program oversight as small as one person is definitely a huge value add, because you now have the oversight, the holistic view of what the system and process landscape, the system of record for data, and really the ins and outs of all the operating process. And I think having preview to that information at the program level definitely is a huge value add to a small company, especially in my view, a small company. So from a program standpoint, the 50,000 foot, I spoke about having a business council that would have a periodic meeting, monthly or quarterly meetup to make sure that we're on point and make sure we're doing the right thing, and challenges, blockers, etc. This is more at the middle management conversation, and project alignment as well, right? So the program level conversation and meetup would be sort of more infrequent, once a month or once a quarter, that body. And the difference between at the communication level, at the budget and planning and prioritization level for project, I like to kind of showcase sort of an example that we use when we did, I was the project or program manager for a program called Fly Forward, and with our collaboration with our accounting and finance team, because there's so many processes involved with month end and quarter end close, how do we even tackle this sort of the identify for a good candidate for process improvement, automation, etc. So we have 3 phases into the Fly Forward program, and part of the early journey was to identify all the key processes, how they're done today, when we know when they start, and how where the information is coming from for supporting, how long does it take, does it require review process, and does it require external data support, etc. I think one of the these template, you can actually create something like that that would fit your business model, supporting the accounting and finance organization, because it's really that particular business team, they're really keen to process, very keen to data, very I would say vigilant to the accuracy and completeness. So having really to go through the working session, the interview session with our key partner in the finance and accounting to understand what process they go through the day in a life, right? So if one person does the same work, update the same data in 2 or 3 different downstream system. Through this process, you will be able to identify for candidates for process improvement, remove some sort of data redundancy, and make sure that the process itself works in a seamless way. In order to do that, you kind of get you kind of have to get to understand what's involved from the end-to-end life cycle, right? If there's so many touch points, we often ask the question of our business user why, and a lot of times the schedule processes are plan and schedule, plan and unschedule, or repetitive plan or unscheduled. So we have sort of an algorithm, RS, RU, and NU. So repeatable, scheduled, repeatable, unscheduled, and non-repeatable and unscheduled. So with this algorithm, it helps our business partner to prioritize and identify if something is repeatable and scheduled and is somewhat predictable. And if the time sink, let's say I spend one FTE every week for month-end process, and it's a repeatable task, and it's a scheduled task, is there a way we can even streamline further? What kind of data process involved to support this particular task that's repeatable and planned, right? So this sort of the algorithm help our management team to understand where are the blockers, the bottlenecks, right? And I think having the sort of I would say the metric or scoring to help. If I were to try to automate something, I'm going to hone into something that's repeatable and scheduled because that's predictable, right? The non-repeatable and unscheduled tasks are very much ad hoc, on the fly type of tasks. That's something that you don't want to, put on your priority plate to automate really. So, having the going through this exercise, it helps me understand what pain point our finance and accounting partners go through every day, every week, every month, and every quarter. And also make me realize that a lot of times during month end and quarter end, a lot of data are being sort of repeated and regurgitated, or similar data that are being used to support those critical month-end processes, right? So this is one sort of dimension into looking into collecting information to help you understand the business process, and really to help the business partner to prioritize their sort of the priority queue, right? So I kind of put this together, aligning with some of their ask or roadmap items next to them, and these are really good instrument and very compelling to tell them, oh, without doubt, without any confusion or a sort of a debate, if you will, by far, right off the bat, I want to work on the cash flow automation because it's planned, scheduled, and I spend 20 hours every month to, to regurgitate data, to pull data, etc., to reconcile data. So having a tool like that, really helped me and our business partner to understand their foundational issue. And oftentimes this is something that you don't quite need to maintain. You probably want to visit every quarter. Because certain things don't change that much. And this would be sort of your foundation to get to the next biggest or next best thing as to where I can automate, where I can streamline, etc., right? Process and data redundancy. So just want to share with you this template that we use in our organization as part of this program management last year. And, the takeaway from that project was truly another piece of really assetless documentation of how to, so that this can be a job share, knowledge share, etc. Okay, so moving on. All right. Coordination and communication, I think I touched a little bit on that, is so important to communicate and kind of keep your key stakeholder at the program and project level where you are, what can be done, and some of the exercise and testing and requirement gathering. You want to make sure that you add transparency to the team, not only to the team, but to the general public and, whoever is interested. You do have that platform for people to come in and say, what's happening, where can I help, where the shortcomings are, and feedback, etc. It's just creating a platform. Whatever works for you, could be Confluence, Jira, whatever the case might be. In our case, we use Microsoft SharePoint to meet that purpose. Last but not least, I touch a little bit about content management, right? There's so many templates out there. So the few projects I've done since on board the BBAM was we onboarded and implemented the help desk onboarding and offboarding employee implementation. I use sort of the waterfall methodology, if you will, working with our vendor, and we created some sort of guidance on the VMO practice, make sure that data privacy, the RPO, RTO, all that good stuff. And to me, that was really great learning experience, how to really put the seed in the right foundation, so that we have sort of the blueprint to go by in the future if we do need to interact with a third party SaaS vendor. And these are just great content to add, and as you move forward in additional future system implementation. So on the project, on the program level, of course, you need to make sure that all the metadata, if you do capture that, all the storytelling, if then else, make sure you put in the right context, program progress, scorecard, etc., and also some of the KB content that you build that's relevant to business, that makes sense to business, that they are willing to come into your site and check things out. Of course, you can measure traffic for usability as well. So at the program level, you do want to sustain and maintain that communication for content sharing. For project side, every project I have a team site, and then eventually when we close the project, we kind of roll everything up into sort of a glossary or metadata wiki for the team, and that project site will be sort of will be closed off, and that transition to the team site. So for all the ongoing process support, FQ&A, and all the going forward process improvement, the team, specific business team, will collaborate from that platform forward, with the understanding that all the training foundation materials also accessible too. So really, to me, everyone can use different project protocol or implementation methodology. I would say a lightweight of everything that I showcase here, from I would say from day zero, exploration, discovery, assessment, to requirement, impact analysis, business analysis, data analysis, to your, requirement write-up, approval, review, design, testing, development testing, all the way to training, all the entire life cycle. I would say, don't sort of cut corner. I would say lightweight of everything, because you want to cover your bases. You want to make sure that it's sustainable, scalable. You thought of everything, right? And that's really testament to why we spend so much time in the beginning of the journey to put together this sort of level 1, level 2 architecture and system diagram. Know your data, know your system, know your people. I always go back to the same mantra, the 3 Ps: people, process, and platform. Technology is only a small percentage of the solution. It's really the ongoing conversation that you would have with your business on really the people and process, and the cultural shift. Okay. Again, this slide kind of recap the difference between program and project. I won't go into specific, and definitely welcome question and welcome your own experience as well. If you don't have a TPMO, you want to get started, definitely, get the right sponsorship, pick, something or proof of concept, start with the business portfolio, or, with the data privacy team, something that is a high value, high visibility, but a small scope of work to start. I think that's a good way of looking at this slide. It's delineation, the difference in practice, the approach, the way you interact with the different stakeholders. So you can definitely see the intensity and the interaction you have at the program level. It's a more holistic, more, I would say, authoritative, in a good way, of course, right? Because you want to make sure you deliver the right message with the top down. Project level, lots of collaboration, making sure you check in, making sure you understand the underlying problem, not just throwing a solution and say, hey, you have it, all the documents out there, have fun, right? No, that's not the whole idea. And without the TPM or discipline oversight, it's kind of hard for company to really sustain, to do that check-in, frequent check-in, because a lot of times when project is over, it's done really. So The last aspect, or second to last aspect, I touched data so many times during the presentation, is you got to have a data foundation, right? And start small. I know I attended a few sessions this morning. There are a lot of different tools out there, different technology, and you have full spectrum of skill sets and maturity of a company. And at the end of the day, I hate to use that word, data matters, right? Without having to really understand your data in the end, no matter how elegant the solution you throw in, without knowing your data, how it will solve your problem at the end, truly it's you don't have your ROI in place, and you may not make the right decision. So really start with the end in sight. So this next couple slides, I touch a little bit on data foundation. Data has been my passion. So started with a TPMO, sort of a pilot run a couple of years back. I also started a data foundation concept, sort of slowly but surely ingest that into our business community. So the next slide touch a little bit on data strategy, data management, governance, and analytic, and of all the areas I've been in different capacity in my past 25 years. So I started something small. So what I've done was I started a Yammer group, right? We're Microsoft shop. So I started a Yammer group. Anything that's relevant to our industry, anything that's relevant to anything related data, I kind of jam into that Yammer group. I invited the whole company to join, sort of and say, hey, awareness, right? So, some days you come in and say, oh, the aircraft, penetration report, there's geo area, how does that stack against our industry or something like that. So I'll throw a report out there and touch a little bit data points that's familiar with our user when they run their Oracle report. So it's sort of, the ability to connect the dot, because you got to speak their language. You don't want to throw them an analytic, that's really like, big data lake and big terminology, that kind of, it's a major turn off. You want to start something small and relevant. So all the industry related, anything that I would think people might be interested in, read up. I've also ingested some data warehouse concept, data mart, conformity, quality, governance, a little bit of everything into this data foundation Yammer group when I started this journey a couple of years back. Start with something small, I think would be a great start. And don't forget data. I know it's probably somewhat last thing people would think of when they think of TPMO, but data to me, it's equally important, if not, as important. The next thing, my charter was sort of informal, was just myself, right? I've been trying to talk to different people and trying to get their senses of interest in data, what level, what kind. And, apart from Excel spreadsheet, apart from, something on PowerPoint, when I started this conversation, I must have a charter, right? I think having a conform message when you try to deliver, it's that much more trustworthy. So again, going back to the 3Ps, on the platform perspective, you already have a beautiful artifact together. And the data, you have all the conversations and discussion with your business stakeholder, data and process owner. You know where the customer is coming from, the different party, the aircraft, the contract terms, all the suppliers and the revenue term, how the amortization schedule is being run, where it's coming from, where it's going, and multiple source of truth, etc. So with all the artifacts and all the homework that you've done, you are able to connect the dots. It's just a matter of making time to connect the dots, right? To present your story. So to me, it's very important. And that's my charter. Some of the artifacts, there are different scale of artifact. To me, I started with something, a little bit of everything, so that people understand the terminology through my Yammer group, through my TPMO conversation, through the project discussion, and through just different working session, retrospect, planning, etc. So you want to ingest a little bit of the industry best practice and some sort of discipline into the artifact, and you want to socialize it in some small scale. You don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want to make them look like, oh, that's my second day job. I don't want to do that. You want to make sure that's something that is augmenting what they do. It's going to be a great instrument, help them do a better job more efficiently and make better decision over time. So this is really your selling point. So some of the artifacts I try to socialize or create from ground up are from those architecture diagram, will be your system flow, process flow, data flow, context diagram. You can kind of maintain that stack of artifact over time. If you have more people in the TPM or IT architecture and application team, welcome them to be part of your partner, and you do have ongoing conversation to maintain these documents. You don't have to go full blown, something small but basic to make sure you capture the essence. On the data side, data-centric delivery side, this is more business facing, really. So you've heard master data management, metadata, all that good stuff you've heard in some form or shape. You want to make them relevant. Anytime when you see a project document, a requirement, a design doc, sort of introduce this term, maybe create an appendix or glossary. A lot of times people don't know what RPO, RTOs are, right? I'm going to create a business glossary. That's your KB or SharePoint for people's consumption. So make sure it's relevant, and when you have the right opportunity, introduce them in the right artifact so that they can correlate, relate, and have that sort of the intention and desire to learn more. Because again, it's the awareness you want to build, and you want to cast the net and get the right catalyst to support you, really. Now, I think ongoing, right? How do I maintain the roadmap, right? So again, as a one-person TPMO and maybe scale to a practice, you do have this business council meeting that you come back every quarter. You create a template to collect the user stories, right? And make them, again, correlate back to the people, process, and system and data, of course. So I put together some of these collected user stories again, in addition to the ones I introduced earlier in the slide for prioritization. It's an ongoing conversation, and especially in this day and age, the economy changes, the business climate changes, how we do things changes. So I think it's important to keep your mindset, your cultural transformation updated, and you will always want to have that open dialogue. So I have certain template that kind of keep the user story fresh. We come back and revisit from time to time, and a lot of times I put them in question form. Why are we doing this? Where does it going? Why are we doing, a lot of, the why, how, where, etc. And that kind of correlates to some of the desire or roadmap items that are communicated or conveyed from your business vertical leads as well. Then, your collaboration, communication, discussion would be often, how are you connected? Why are you doing this? How does it scale? So then to them is not the fresh, first concept. It's a continual conversation. So if you put them in their shoes and convert this conversation and triangulate the data in a question format, they can absolutely relate a lot more, because in the end, they understand, you're trying to solve their problem. You're not trying to throw more technology and tools to them. Right. So again, this sort of a dashboard, the roadmap items, it's a maintainable, often upkept conversation with your business stakeholders. Okay. And I didn't speak a lot about the dashboard, and I know people are, love a lot of different graphic data visualization. Of course, one of the key conversations we should have is the C-level, the leadership. What kind of reports do they need, or do they use or get on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly periodic basis? What are the important data set or key metric to them? And you start with the top, right? Of course, that's how you get buy-in, cultural process transformation. In the end, if you need augment a new tool, having a training program or data awareness, you do want to start with a top-down influence to help steer the direction and make sure that they influence with the right people. So start with, if you haven't, I'm sure a lot of us have, the top 10 dashboards, right, at your fingertip. And a lot of technology, people spoke about Snowflake, Looker, and we're an Oracle shop and Microsoft shop. There's a lot of integrated technology we can use, but start with a very basic. What are the top 3, 5, 10 report or dashboard or analytic instrument that the C-level and the top management would be dying to get on a day in, day out basis, especially in the digital age these days. So a great conversation piece, and I would definitely encourage folks to use some kind of template to create and maintain the data as such, to kind of keep this incremental journey to deliver the analytic value to the C-level. And that in the end, they are the ones that will be writing the checkbook and to support you for a longer, more scalable practice. Okay. last but not least, how do we scale and sustain, right? I touch a little bit on, communicate, communicate, communicate. The three C's, the influence of three C's: connect, communicate, and collaborate. And I have so many sites, transition from project program to really sustain as a team site so that our cross-functional folks can collaborate and connect with and day in and day out as part of their operation model. Again, it's sort of change of behavior and culture as well. So the three C's, and the next couple of slides will touch a little bit on the importance of this model and the way to sustain the roadmap management from a TPMO perspective. Okay, very just so straightforward, right? Communicate how, when, and with whom. You want to make sure when you have meetings, right? Not just meeting for the sake of meeting. You want to have very, very concise agenda. Right now, we have just zoom in and out. I'm sure people are very much getting used to the remote collaboration. There are a lot of challenges still, and we got used to it. We sort of work our own style through, but there's still a lot of challenges. But make sure you don't stop communicate. Communication is the key. Connect all the dots together. Now that you've spent your time and invested so much energy and time in putting together these beautiful artifacts and sites, make sure you use them to their best benefit, right? Collaboration. Anytime when there's new process, new request, new system, or new of anything, make sure you leverage that collaboration platform, right? The impact analysis, look at your artifact, look at your template, upkeep your user story, reprioritize having the one-on-one. And, I think a couple folks mentioned this morning that right now everyone is digital. There's no formal structure of a conference room. There's a hierarchy feel in the conference room in person, but now that it's digital, everyone is level, playing field and equal ground, and your voice is being heard. Your voice is important. So it's so important to have that connect, and maybe every other week check in with folks, and you have your training. How did it go? Create a survey, etc. So again, the three C's are super important to maintain the TPMO practice and continue on your roadmap management journey. Some of the communication channel we've done is newsletter, lots of, great forum we use on team sites, publish on wiki, glossary, etc. Just to really make sure that the instrument we provide using this TPMO concept are eventually going to help our user, successful, because again, the digital transformation journey we just started and it's here to stay. So the adoption, the awareness is out there. So any content that is relevant and important to your user, they would get on board. I think, again, start something small. So some of these examples that we've done, proven to be somewhat successful. Of course, there's always room for improvement. You always want to have some kind of standard platform to really publish your program level and project level communication, and whatever you have in your business environment will definitely do. So how do we manage? How do we even start it, right? So a lot of times you have your business cases already. So I'm sure your company already have a pipeline backlog of something, right? How do we start, right? So, I have some of the bullet points here that would help you, collaborate with business. If you already have, monthly check-in with so-and-so, maybe grab their idea and run this by them and see what their thoughts are. And any of the sort of the channel that you want to navigate through, and definitely talk to the right people and get their thoughts on, how do we do better. So again, if your organization is somewhat structured, it's so much easier because you already have a lot of planned meetings, standing meetings already. If you want to start with TPMO or strengthen and improve or expand your TPMO practice, a lot of the venues are already in front of you, and use them, because time is an essence, and especially with all the compliance regulatory governance in our hand in this day and age, it's so important to make sure we're all doing the right thing. So digital transformation comes with challenges, but I think having a TPMO concept and foundation will help steer the right direction. So I'd like to share with you one survey that we had put together. I think we kind of socialized in the beginning, but we didn't get a lot of the big feedback. But we gotten some kind of critical sort of high value and high touch point, if you will. So we create a survey based on collaboration, communication, engagement model, and we kind of sent or intended to send out to our key or middle managers and want to understand if they understand the business process, right, and how their internal working and how they collaborate with external business user. So you can always start with surveying the key stakeholder and understand their pain point. And again, then you can collect data, and you have a lot of great information to make the right decision. So many ways you can get started, many. So there's no one model, but whatever works for you, whatever you think you collect the right information to help you strengthen or stand up something new, or make a better presence from a TPMO or IT perspective, right? TPMO, if in a mature company, it has lots of dotted line reporting, from funding, CFO, from regulatory compliance guidance, COO, and IT CTO architecture. So just many branches across your organization. So, our practice is still sort of pilot right now. My key focus on a compliance program, and has dotted line to pretty much all across as well, as an example. So if you have not embarked on a TPMO journey, think about how importance of decision making is for any net new project, any net new spend, and just think of all the different circumstances and consequences cross-functionally, and design that reporting structure that way. And of course, between program and project, you will communicate across the company either way you will. So this is just an example of the reporting structure, and it's all connected in the whole ecosystem, right? The key takeaway for me, definitely no regret how we get started. We have a long way to go. We have a lot of great discipline, a lot of great website, and a lot of great lessons learned in place. I would say there's a lot more benefit than, standing up a conceptual framework, even with one person with the right skill set. Start with that concept, the TPMO concept, the oversight, the big picture, the holistic view, and with the the benefit I say that I won't read the whole bullets, and these are very standard and very logical for us to understand. Why not, right? In order to scale, the 3 C's, collaborate, connect, and communicate, super key. And again, there's no right formula. It's whatever works for your business, and make it agile, make it work for you, and evaluate time to time, and make it incremental success. Always check in. And I often start on all my email, hope all is well, and I mean it, right? Because I don't see you. The virtual connect is great, but I don't see you. I can't give you a hug. So empathy, make it personable, make it relevant. And I think over time, they will come around. And I think the whole journey requires the whole cross-functional acceptance. So, I would say get started, even with something small. So with that, I'm going to adjourn my presentation.